by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and boy, did we have an opening weekend. We had upsets, we had comebacks, and we also had drubbings as well. And to go through all of that action with me, I have Stephen Harris. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, thank you, Paul. Good evening, and once again, a privilege and a pleasure to be on the TDM talking about round one of Super Rugby.
Yes, and now I've actually got you on the right side with your Twitter handle underneath you. So there we go. So everyone, if you want to get in touch with us and chat rugby during the week, you can see the Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're listening to the podcast, mine is at DrivingMaul. And Stephen, your Twitter handle?
It's Stephen73_H.
It's catchy one you've got there, Stephen. Well done.
Yeah.
So we kicked off in January. I mean, geez, it was an early start. It was hot, and that definitely impacted some of the action from around the games, didn't it?
Interestingly enough, Paul, it also started in New Zealand. Not too sure wherever you're watching around the world, but the New Zealand conferences are now starting a half an hour earlier, as well, as opposed to 7:30, starting at 7:05. So just that extra half an hour. So it's still pretty warm, and you've got to remember we are in daylight saving hours at this time. So in theory, you're probably thinking it's 6:05 as opposed to 7:05. But you're right, very warm.
Yeah, very warm weather, and I think that played into it. Also, you've got to remember that the different teams or different countries have got different rules around this. But we are the All Blacks, for example, are only allowed to play 180 minutes in the first 3 rounds, and so all those sort of protocols are in place as well. So if there were some selections this weekend you thought were a bit funny, that might have been why it happened. Or if there were some substitutions that happened that were a bit strange, that's probably why. It's because they're saving minutes for the next 2 weeks. And there are some big games coming up over the next few weeks. But we kicked off on Friday night with the Blues versus the Chiefs for this 25th year of Super Rugby. It's an anniversary one, folks, as well. Oh, let's get into it. It's Rugby Reloaded. Reloaded? Is that right? No, Recoded. Sorry. According to Sky, not entirely sure what this recoded means. The last time there was an issue with code, we had a whole bunch of players separate and go north and play rugby league. But hey, hopefully that's not what they're talking about here. The Blues went up to a 19-5 lead at half time. Played some predictable rugby. It was one-out rugby, but all the players knew what they were doing. It was organised. It looks like the coaching team have got the team all on one page at least.
Yeah, Paul, interestingly enough, I know the Blues threw a lot into their attack initially, especially by just getting the ball in the hands of some of their bigger ball carriers. But ironically, even if you think back to their first try, pretty much came from broken play, didn't it? And in fact, if you look at all their tries, were pretty much came from a breakout and just showed enough patience to finish those tries. It was quite a weird performance from the home side in terms of, look, they looked like they were going to run all over the Chiefs, but the one thing that they couldn't really do is completely break the Chiefs going to the halftime. I mean, so that third try they scored was only really scored on first half, and I think if the Chiefs had actually gone in at 12-5 down, they would have been really, really happy, given that they hadn't had a lot of field position, hadn't been able to put much together. But in terms of the Blues, they were looking good carrying the ball, and of course their set piece looked to be a real strength as well, Paul.
Yeah, well, when they went through phases, they really they were structured. You could see what they were trying to do, but they just were going nowhere. It was off, as you say. The Tony Lambourne try was off broken play. The next 2 tries were both off scrums, off set piece. Even the Chiefs' tries were off set piece as well. So set piece played a big part in this game. Neither side really were that good or could maintain a structure or could break down the opposition on multi-phase play. But a friend of ours, Ryan, put out from the Tri Sports app, put out a tweet mentioning how many times the Blues had lost games that they'd been leading in the second half. And the big question mark was, why is this? And I think part of this is that it's basically the Blues are just too one-dimensional. You know what's coming, and they don't change that picture in the second half, which allows the coaches at half-time of the opposition to rearrange things in their own team and basically take the game away in that second half. I'm not sure it's a fitness or another thing. I think it's that that's what's going on here, and we saw that with the Chiefs. They came out, we had a line-out maul, a good break, and suddenly it's 19-all after 50 minutes, and what looked like, as you say, a promising position for the Blues had evaporated.
Oh, listen, no, I thought the Chiefs, I mean, so whatever Warren Gatlin, and listen, congratulations to Warren Gatlin, his first time back in New Zealand coaching a Super Rugby side, and whatever he said and the changes that he made for the Chiefs absolutely worked a treat, bringing Anton Leonard-Brown on, but especially Aaron Cruden. Aaron Cruden just seemed to manage the Chiefs in the right area, goal kicking aside. He just basically knew when something was on how to ignite that Chiefs back line. And also, I've got to say, a real good lift from the Chiefs forwards as well. And they were really strongly led up front by Takiaho. All of a sudden, he seemed to be their go-to guy, getting over the advantage line. I know, Paul, you mentioned him to me a couple of years ago, if he could sort his line out throwing in, because he's a heck of a unit, isn't he? Very, very big.
He is, and I put a tweet out there saying, right, who's going to be the top try scoring hooker of the in Super Rugby? Is it going to be Takiaho, who picked up a couple, or is it going to be the Brumbies player? I want to say Flossu now, but I think that's wrong, isn't it?
Gets a lot of tries from Mauls. I know that much.
Gets a lot of tries from Mauls, but so does Samasoni as well. Tokolati. Sorry, I call him by his first name because I'm used to being in the Waikato changing rooms. I've interviewed him a few times, and so Waikato, media rooms, and yeah, everyone talks about him as well as Sammy actually. Those two guys I think are going to be 1 and 2 as far as try scoring from hooker goes. So look out for those for that race this season. They both got a pretty good strike rate on the pitch, and if you're looking for a fancy rugby player that flies under the radar for a few tries, there you go. Samasoni's could be a good one for you.
I think the player you were thinking of is Whaianga. He scored.
That's it. Thank you.
Scored a lot of tries from line-out drives, if I recall, last year. And he always tended to pick up a brace, didn't he? Usually in most games.
And he's picked up. I think he scored 15 tries last year. The top tries. I think he equalled the most tries by a forward ever in Super Rugby. And again, he scored again this weekend. So for those of you who play fantasy rugby, 2 players there that you might want to pick up. They're potentially on the cheap. So yes, some of the Blues issues that we've seen for many years, kicking goals. Perifetta, didn't help himself tonight. Left too many points out there on the pitch, which could have been the difference in this one. Basically the Blues knew that the Chiefs knew the Blues couldn't play the length of the pitch. Cruden played some good game management with players like Anton Leonard-Brown, Tapia, and Triple T around him. They just controlled the game and got themselves out to a good win. And it proves that I think one of the things we were saying pre-season, Chiefs are one of those 4 teams that are real title contenders. It's going to take them a few weeks to get up to speed because of new personnel and new coaching, but that's a really good start for them.
Yeah, probably the only real concern. Couple of injuries along the way. Especially the injury to Laulala looks sort of reasonably serious. I mean, he's probably a big part of their plans. Their number 1 tight head, so that's a little bit of a concern. But there are other areas where they've got so much depth, 2 quality halfbacks and Te Toiroa Tahuarangi, and when you can bring Brad Weber off the bench, that's pretty handy. And of course, if they can keep Aaron Cruden relatively fit, and a lot of interchangeable options in that midfield. And I must mention Quinton Tapia. He's another one that you've highlighted in recent times. I think for a first up against an English international, Joe Marchant, I think he more than held his own.
Yeah, Joe Marchant did okay as well. To be fair, I think a lot of us are going to be following his progress this season. After that, though, we went across the ditch to Canberra for the Brumbies versus the Reds. Obviously, with all the bushfires going on, I mean, part of Canberra was apparently burning at this point, so no wonder there wasn't that bigger crowd. But the game managed to go ahead. The Brumbies got themselves a narrow win over the Reds, but this one was my first word in my notes is errors. Is that this? Yeah, both sides here. Brumbies kind of pressured, had lots of dominance, but couldn't deal that killer blow. And the Reds early on, especially, have they even been introduced to each other? I mean, it really was a bit scrappy, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, so for the Reds, they sort of leaked. They pretty much leaked some early. They leaked an early try, but they actually did hit back with a couple of their zone and led 17-7. I thought that might have just given the confidence to go forward. But probably their own worst enemies, making too many errors. And the Brumbies are one particular team that can hold onto the ball for long periods. And I think they just basically applied a lot of pressure at breakdown. God, there was a lot of turnover penalties in this game as well. Probably the highlight of the game. But just really at the end of the day, I think that pretty much that late try to the Reds almost flattered them. They'd be pleased they picked up the bonus point.
Yeah, so I mean, 20 unanswered points in that second half for the for the Brumbies. As you say, controlled the ball well. Had a few players. I mean, I think perhaps some players were trying to overplay their over there. Wilson, for example, was another one who made breaks, but was throwing all sorts of weird offloads and passes that just were not on for the number 8. So I think both those teams need to think about just getting the basics right. Concentrate on that first before you try all the flair stuff. There was a tweet that Junior, gone blank.
Qatar.
The ex-Blues player, also played for Exeter Chiefs, Samoan international, Polly something like that. Anyway,
Polynga, yep.
Yeah, Polynga. That he liked. Someone was asking him, how do the players play what's in front of them? And I replied, look, by having the confidence from the coach to do that, and told you're not going to be chastised for it. And he liked my tweet. And that's exactly what it comes down to. That's why we see the players giving it a go. Players were giving it a go in this game, but perhaps they need to get their basics right first before they try that kind of some of that stuff.
One thing we may cut them a little bit of slack. The conditions were extremely hot. I know the coach of the Brumbies basically pretty much came out post game and mentioned that this was bordering on dangerous. I think it was upwards of about 38 degrees. But as previously stated, we are in late January.
We are, and look, they're allowed to have drinks breaks as long as both coaches agree. Apparently one of them didn't. The idea is that it was probably the Reds because they're used to playing in hotter weather from further north, but that's just wrong. Trying to do it for tactical purposes. Look, guys, it's hot. Take the drinks breaks. And let's be safe around these players, please. Mm-hmm. Overnight then, and we went over to a totally different style of game over with the Sharks and the Bulls. We had something like 31 kicks from hands in the Blues game, 30 in the Brumbies versus Reds. We had 76 kicks from hand in this game. Again, it's too hot to be playing rugby in Durban at this time of year, folks. Okay.
Not to mention the ball. Also the humidity in Durban, as one of your previous guests, John O'Connor, said before. It's the ball is like a piece of soap over there. Hence the kicking game. I don't think a lot of these teams want to play too much code in their own halves. Listen, this game was pretty much it tightened up near the 76th minute when it was 16-15, but the Sharks pretty much wrapped it up with Nohamba scored a very good try near the end, but not a lot to write home. You've got to say, Paul, it was a real grind this game, wasn't it? Only 2 tries to the victors.
Yeah, only 2 tries to 1 try. Only 2 tries to the victors. You're right. Yeah, the Bulls didn't even get there. This Bulls side, and it's got a bit of a back to the future kind of style to it. It's got lots of young players, but it's also got Mornay Steyn trying to pull the strings. Now, I don't think you can blame him too much for it being a kicking game, as you say. The humidity there was nuts. It was the right style of play to play. One of the things that another friend of mine from Durban, that Andre says is that don't expect try bonus points in the first month from games in Durban. They just don't happen, and we can see that. You can see why with this kind of performance. The Sharks really won this one at the breakdown. They dominated that area, and that's where they won it, which meant the Bulls couldn't get rid of continuity, couldn't get any tries. But we did get a Mornay Steyn drop goal, which is always nice to see.
I do wonder, Paul, if you sort of look at some of those outside backs for the for the balls, Speckman, Hendricks, Gallant. These guys are all brilliant runners, but you've got a basically a first five who's more of a static kick out of the hand type first five. Just a little weird to me. You want somebody who can ignite those outside backs, because that's a strength for them.
It is. I mean, they've got the Stormers coming up this weekend, but I think we have to wait a couple of weeks before we see whether they're going to constantly play a kicking game or whether it was a matter of conditions, because it could have been just conditions on that night. But yeah, you're right. Steyn does have that reputation, especially on the high belt. He can pretty much kick from one goal line to the other. When you've got that option, the forwards really do like you to do that. We follow this up with arguably game of the round. The Sunwolves versus the Rebels, 36-27. We have plenty of action in this one. With the Sunwolves have had 2 weeks preparation. Was it 2 weeks or 3 weeks preparation coming into this game? Now, if you were to watch the game and say which sides had 3 weeks preparation, you'd say the Rebels. Either they were complacent or just really badly coached coming into this one. But the Sunwolves, here's a team of guys. Look, no one's there from last year. They've got a brand new head coach as well, and yet they're still playing a similar style of rugby. But here's a bunch of guys who basically are not wanted by other rugby teams on the whole. You've got your players like your Mitch Jacobsons and etc. in there, who are very much fringe or even just training squad players, who've got themselves an opportunity to play rugby they enjoy and to prove a point to other people. And we saw them there. We saw them doing that. We saw them just enjoying playing rugby with no real pressure, didn't we?
Yeah. Listen, the Rebels will be really, really disappointed. You've arguably got at least 4 names that I can see that went away to Rugby World Cup in Tumua, Hodge, Corabetti, Haylett Petty. So there's some quality in their backline, but that backline really, really struggled with former England midfielder Ben Teal. I thought Ben Teal was direct. I thought he just took a lot of stopping, and I just thought he gave them a point of difference in the back line. And Garth April at first five, we all know what a gun goal kicker he is, former Sharks player, very, very good goal kicker, and of course some real good finishes in Fafita and also Tai on the wing. So they look really good. And actually, I think a former Brumby at fullback, James Dargaville, as well. He converted himself from midfield winger into fullback.
Yeah, and he had a great. He ran back a try early in the second half, really, really well. This Rebels team played some dumb rugby. Let's be clear. They only went over 5 phases about twice. They kept kicking away. They had this idea that chipping over down the right wing was going to get a try. It did eventually on about the 4th attempt, but before that they'd given away a try doing it. The only good thing I can say about the Rebels is that they stuck to their task and followed through on what their plan was. The fact their plan wasn't working and was broken means that they shouldn't have stuck to it. But yeah, they had persistence, and yeah, they shouldn't have done. They really got things wrong on the night. So yeah, well done to Sunwolves. I think most of us were expecting the Sunwolves to lose every single game this season. So this is absolutely, and now they're top of the Australian Conference after round 1. Fantastic.
and you know what? And they'll take a lot of confidence out there. There are some really good individual players. Probably the likes of Jeremy Adams, the Auckland loose head prop, obviously missed out on a super contract, so decided to head over to the Sunwolves, picked up a contract there. Brendan O'Connor, the former Blues flank, is also playing over there. So they're not the worst, if you know what I mean. Also great to see a really good performance too from former Northland lock, Michael Stolberg. Michael was a former Australian age group lock, and listen, I thought he put in a very good performance. Was always their go-to man, and seemed to be right in the thick of it when basically carrying the ball forward.
Yeah, there are a bunch of guys here who are fringe, who are very, very good Mitre 10 Cup level, Curry Cup level players. The guys who run the team at that level. who are fringe, who can step in. I mean, Mitch Jacobson did a really good job at the Chiefs last year when there were injuries, but they're not quite there getting those contracts. They're in the shout. But as you say, they're all decent players, but they're being asked to play a style of rugby that they enjoy. And I think that's what we saw more than anything else out there. We then went on to the champions hosting the Waratahs. This one finished 43-25. But if anything, that scoreline makes it sound closer than it really was. There were some tweets out there I saw talk about how the Crusaders are making this rugby look easy. And the reason they're doing that is because of the amount of running that the players are doing off the ball to be there in support. And players look up, they can see a player immediately there, and they can offload it, and they can keep that ball alive. And by keeping that ball alive, the defence never resets, and you basically you get to play some really nice rugby because you're on the front foot, and the defence is scrambling. So a lot of people will talk about, oh wow, what wonderful offloads and all this kind of stuff. The amount of work off the ball that these players are putting in is crazy, and that's what makes it all look so easy for the ball carrier.
Listen. The things that stood out to me is obviously what you've just mentioned, but also the score tightened up around about the 58th minute. I think it was 24-18. Credit to the Waratahs because they've got a lot of youngsters, and they hit back. And I got to say full credit to the boy out on the wing for the Waratahs, Nakwanatasi, I think is pronounced it. Only a youngster. But listen, he scored 2 tries, and he had a bit of work to do on both occasions. He actually probably on the first occasion he showed a clean pair of heels to Will Jordan, who's not slow, and in fact that was the second try. But the first try, he basically stood him up and scored in the corner. So listen, good work from the young fella. They showed they've got some ability. Curtly Beale at the back. The Waratahs, they probably had 3 real clear-cut chances in the first half, but never really took them, Paul. And I thought Curtly Beale always looked dangerous. But the problem is for the Waratahs in the final watch, they missed about 40-odd tackles.
They really worked well to give him space, and he looked dangerous, but he took the wrong option just about every single time.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. Is that they've got him into space. He's got players around him, and he passes to the guy that's covered. And he doesn't even look the other way, where he's got 2 open guys from memory from one of them. And that's the real problem here. Is him taking the wrong options is killing this Tar side. Right? There was a tackling issue as well, but when you're on the back foot, you're scrambling, you're going to miss quite a few tackles. But the first up tackling needs to improve. Agreed. But Beale's his decision making. He looks dangerous, but he's just making too many mistakes. Also, I mean, they just keep wheeling off the players off the production line, don't they? As you mentioned, Jordan went over for a couple of tries, and a couple of people going, "Wow, he's going to be top try scorer this year." Hang on a second, folks. Bridge and Reese didn't even start the game. So look, there's the only problem from a fantasy rugby point of view for these players is that they will get rotated. The good thing about that is that they will be fresh when they do get to play, and they will play well.
Paul, I was going to say a player who's been around for a long time now, but he's only 24 years old. And listen, I thought he was exceptionally good as David Havili. I thought he was really, really good. I know we've highlighted Jordan and Whaianuku looks a good prospect as well. But I think if David Havili can keep this consistency going, I think there's no reason why he can't put himself into a black jersey frame later in the season.
Yeah, but we've been saying that for the past 3 years. Now, he's lucky that Hansen's now not selecting. Hansen clearly didn't like him as a player for some reason. Now the question is, was that across the whole of the coaching group? In which case, Ian Foster won't like him either.
I'll tell you what, Paul. The picture to me is a little bit more open because obviously Ben Smith has pretty much moved on. I'm still not sure about Damien McKenzie being a fullback, and I'm certainly not sure about Geordie Barrett in the 15 jersey. So to me, that position is still it's still wide open.
But I think he's one of those players that I think a bit like Matt Todd with the Crusaders, who is part of well, he's not one of the, obviously he's not one of their internationals, but he's one of those guys that is that glue that holds this side together, that makes this tide tick. David Havili is a wonderful player. One player from the Waratahs I just want to mention before we do move on though is Harrison, the young fly half. Good to see he had a decent game at 10. Didn't set the world on light, but didn't make too many mistakes either. And I think it's hopefully put to bed the idea of Curtly Beale playing 10 at the Tars. Curtly Beale needs to be more free ranging than that. I think Harrison had a decent game, and that was good to see.
Paul, I think Rob Penny has just really got to stick with this guy, just regardless, and just give him the confidence to say, hey, you're going to be our 10 moving forward. Let's go from there. I mean, it says for all Curtly Beale's sort of shortcomings when it gets to getting players in the right position, I actually do like him at fullback because he is creative, and I think he's one of those players with a little bit more space. I don't really like him in the midfield. I quite like Carmichael Hunt at second five. Looks really creative, got a couple of really good offloads off, but I also thought the other guy that really impressed me was Gordon, the halfback. He's a heck of a good runner, and he's really dangerous when opportunities from quick ball are available.
Yeah, the big thing for me is when you see Beale in that 12 jersey, he tends to run sideways too much. By having it 15, it doesn't matter if he runs lateral. That's part of what 15s can do. Carmichael Hunt also solid defensively as well. He puts in some big hits, and you don't run through him. So he's a good guy to have next to a young fly half in that sense. The only person I would talk about is Mac Mason, who I think is injured, but he's been the future Wallaby number 10 for a number of years now. That hasn't come through for about the last 2 or 3 years. This is this was supposed to be his big year. Now that I've gone blank as the guy who left the Tars, who's their 10 before.
Bernard Foley.
Bernard Foley, thank you. Since Foley's moved on, he was supposed to be the guy that stepped in. Having an early season injury hasn't helped that at all, obviously. So it'll be interesting. But I say Harrison to me had a good game. After this one, we moved over to which one was next? Stormers versus the Hurricanes. Oh, dearie me. 27-0. Now, Stormers, along with the Chiefs and Crusaders, were one of the 4 teams that we had down pre-season as being a contender for this competition. But to put it away, and the Hurricanes have a history of blowing hot and cold for their for their opening game of the season. I remember them putting away the Sunwolves by 11 points, but also losing to the Bulls recently away by a big margin in their opening game. So I'm not sure this is something that the Hurricanes seem to have within them. But this was one of those silly plays like Billy Proctor blocking the runner, picking up a couple of yellow cards. I mean, Fafita also for a high tackle, spending 20. So they were back to back, so they had 20 minutes there of one man down. This discipline and just general play was really poor from the Canes.
Yeah, just the real disappointing thing for me is that you really want your senior players to stand up in this situation, and I don't think any of those senior players really stood up. TJ Perenara just seemed to be, want of a better word, a little bit off his game, but just in terms of his own discipline. There's talking to the ref and the sniping, and he went too far, and he upset the ref. Yeah, and even had a crack at one of his own players, Carriffy, as Duplessis Carriffy as well. And I thought out of the 15, Carriffy I thought was the best on show. He just seemed to be one player who was basically committing himself around that ruck area, getting in, being competitive, and they needed to be against a Stormers team that had, I think it was upwards of 12 players in the starting 23, nine that initially sort of started six in the pack, 6 Springboks in the pack, and when you've got the Steph du Toit, who's arguably one of the better rugby players around in the world at the moment, making that number 6 or 6, he plays in the 7 jersey, but to me he plays more like a 6. You also had Khaleesi out there, and that Stormers front row as well. Wow, they were Melhuber, Mohambi, and Kitsoff especially. This Kitsoff got a neck. Seriously, he looks like a head on top of shoulders. They were extremely solid and ruthless, and they just didn't give the Hurricanes any go forward, knocked them back on the advantage line, and for me that was the real disappointment. I think you've got to change it up a little bit. If you keep knocking on that door and you're getting knocked backwards, getting no go forward, you're not going to get guys like Nani Laumapi or Proctor into the game. I mean, to say Proctor, he's what is he, a 5-year signing?
Yep.
He's still a young player. You need to get guys into the game, and then you sort of look at the back three. I thought the back three were all probably, dare I say it, off their game as well. Geordie Barrett just trying. This is what happens with this Hurricane side when things are going wrong. I think they break away from their supposed pattern and all try to do far too much on their own.
Yeah, I mean, in the live chat, talks too much. TJ, he does at times, and he definitely was saying the wrong things to the ref. But the problem for this Stormers team is that they didn't have to go past 10 in this game. Now you're right, they got a very good pack, and with Herschel Yanchis and Damon with Willemse, they've got a good 9-10. But they didn't get to use those the Petersons. I mean, and with Dylan Lades, they can play left, right, and they did a bit of that. We saw them doing a bit of that of playmakers. But Jamie Roberts didn't really have to do much in this game. If you look at their tries, 2 were from intercepts, 1 was a line-out drive, and 1 was a crossfield kick very early on by Herschel Yanchis. Those backs hardly had any had anything to do in this game apart from a bit of defending. Again, in the chat, no Bodie equals breakdown from within. So this is a transition year for the Hurricanes. In can Fletcher Smith or Gordon Bashop step up into that 10 jersey?
Okay.
And so far they haven't. Unfortunately, see on the Silver Fern forum, Fletcher Smith being called journeyman because he's on to his 3rd Super Rugby franchise. This has got to be the year that he steps up and becomes Super Rugby level. Otherwise, I think his career is going to be pretty much over, to be honest with you.
It's really interesting. Most of the really good first fives are doing a lot of talking to their halfback. They have an expectation from their halfback. They have an expectation of the ball that they're about to receive, and it just really didn't happen for the Hurricanes, where Williams at first 5 looked to have time. There were times he could even run sideways, straighten the lineup, and I thought he had a solid game. But I'm saying that if you really analyse the Stormers passing, like you previously said, we didn't see it. We hardly saw a fluent backline move. And given that they've got some real pace, that the 7 specialists and Sinatla and Pedersen out wide, not to mention Lake at the back, that's a lot of pace. And they didn't even have to use it. Probably says more about their own performance than probably the Hurricanes' performance.
Yeah, we are going to need to see more from the Stormers this season if they are going to challenge, but they didn't need to do it today or the weekend. Sorry. Final game of the weekend was another drubbing, 38-8 by the Jaguares over the Lions. And the Jaguares are that 4th team, along with the Crusaders, Chiefs, and Stormers, who we really think are going to be the challengers this season for this. Oh, by the way, actually, sorry. One thing first before I go there. This Canes team is done in the live chat. I don't think so. We've seen them have big losses to the Bulls away from home at the first game of the season. I think that they can move on and still play some good rugby this year.
Yeah, I was going to also mention too the 2 props that came off the bench, Podidaka Stones and also Tavita Mafilio. If you remember, Tavita Mafilio, 8 days previous was in the wider training squad for the Blues, only 21 years old. So I went over there as a replacement. So they had, they did bring some young guys off the bench, but there's some real learnings as well. We know the talent of the Asafo Moore, the hooker, but man, that weakness that he's got in terms of throwing in. He's going to have to sort it out if he wants to push for higher honours.
Yeah, you've got players like Dane Coles, Artie
Yeah.
Surveyor to come back as well. So yeah, look, this is they will be much better than this. Don't worry. Final game of the round, so Jaguares versus the Lions. 38-8, the try bonus point there for the Jaguares, similarly as the Stormers and the Crusaders also racks up. And Chris Riley, is this truly the end of the great-ish Lions team? And yes, I think it is. I think they just lost too many players over the last 3 seasons, and they just don't have the skills there. What I think we're also seeing is also perhaps the start of the impact of the salary cap that South Africa has imposed across their 6 professional teams, and that they just can't afford to keep all their players anymore. That's why you've got players like Marks playing in Japan in the top league, missing out on Super Rugby this year. RG Stayman's over there as well, and there's been lots of clips of him on Twitter, man against boys. Let's be honest. But yeah, this is very much a rebuilding, and it'll be a new great or new good Lions side if it becomes good. It's definitely the end of that era where they went to a couple of finals. Unfortunately.
Yeah, it closed up at half-time 10-8, and we thought we were in for a tight contest. But the irony of it, Kremer, the number 7 for the Jaguares, gets yellow carded, and 4 minutes later they score their second try, and it's 28 unanswered points in the second half.
Yeah, and some lovely tries in that second half. Now, you got to remember also they lost their fly half early on, and then I've just got the wrong game up on my phone. But they lost. Yeah, they lost. Who was it? Diaz Bonelli early on, and we had Miotti come on, who ran the show really, really well for them. He had a very good game, and when he wasn't expecting to be having to play that long. Moroni also scored a couple of really nice tries as well from outside centre, and yeah, this is a Jaguares team that's continued what it was doing. Really dangerous backs, really solid tackling, a bit of a dodgy set piece. Basically, they're looking very similar to last year, aren't they?
Oh, very much so. They've just got to listen. They have lost a few players from last year, but you look through most of the names. Most of the names are from from last year, and a lot of international experience as well. And listen, they'll probably want to go one better than what they did last year, and that pretty much starts by winning their conference.
Yep, absolutely, and that's this is what this season is going to be really interesting, is because the Africa Conference to me is between the Stormers and the Jaguares. It's going to be interesting. That battle's going to be really kind of big. The battle over in New Zealand is between the Chiefs and the Crusaders, and Australia. Well, to be honest with you, I don't think they're going to worry too many sides or not be too involved come the point to the end of the season. Just very quickly, I'm not going to do predictions. We'll do some next week. Kicks off with the Highlanders versus the Sharks. We've not seen the Highlanders play yet, so I'm really interested in that one. But let's be honest, the game of the round is going to be on Saturday night. Chiefs versus the Crusaders. That's looking like it's going to be a cracker, isn't it?
Did you say my Chiefs versus the Crusaders?
I just said the Chiefs versus the Crusaders.
Oh, sorry.
I've got a Blues jersey on, so
very much so. That Chiefs Crusaders one, really looking for that. I mean, so the Chiefs would have taken a lot of heart out of that victory. That was no mean feat to come back from 19-5. Let's not forget that, regardless of some of the so-called shortcomings the Blues might have. Really looking forward to that one.
Yep. A couple of the games. So I'll be live straight after the Highlanders versus the Sharks and the Chiefs versus the Crusaders, and also the Jaguares versus the Hurricanes. So those are the 3 games I will be coming. I'll be doing live post-match reactions to. Other games are up there though. Brumbies versus the Rebels, which is going to be interesting to see how the Rebels bounce back from that Sunwolves thrashing. Waratahs versus the Blues, Lions versus the Reds, and finally Stormers versus the Bulls. But a cracking lineup of games this coming weekend. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining me for this for the show. Don't forget, you can see Stephen's over there somewhere, his Twitter handle, so have a chat with him during the week. Also, head over to DrivingMaul.com. I think around about midnight-ish, my Super Rugby predictions will be coming out, and around about 11-ish, my Six Nations predictions. So look out for those. They'll be coming out soon on DrivingMaul.com. And also, Major League Rugby is kicking off next weekend as well. So Major League Rugby predictions will be coming out. I've also done a couple of previews, one to explain the changes of the league structure, and also preview all the squads as well. So if you want to, if you're interested in the knowing what's going on in the States through, especially Major League Rugby, go check out DrivingMaul.com. Thank you very much, Stephen, and everyone, enjoy whatever rugby you're watching this coming weekend.